Hello, Cooper Glover, 1972 here, also known as Brian. So, a few months ago, well, was it a few months ago? Or I think I initially said it in October and maybe carried it over to November, saying like in November, people were doing, well, let me back up a second. So in October, I decided to follow some other YouTubers and do a horror movie for each day of October, calling it the 31 Days of Halloween. And some people they did for November they did Noir November, and I didn't know if I wanted to do that, but I thought of another thing to do, which would be foreign cinema, and in particular Middle Eastern, African, maybe some Southeastern, Southeast Asian films. I even thought of and I thought of Japanese cinema, like a Japanese cinema series, but that might be might be separate from Middle Eastern cinema. So as the title says, it's Middle Eastern cinema. Um, I picked one of my garage band songs I did quite a while back. It's something like maybe it was 2012. I did the song that precedes what you're watching now, and I picked an image off of Google Images, a Sphinx near some pyramids. I thought that was kind of Middle Eastern, African kind of looking, so that's why I chose. The garage band song has some like Middle Eastern instruments in it. You're not going to hear the whole song. If you want to hear the whole song, it's called "A Cry for the Sky," and it's way down in my videos, but that's where you'll see it. But anyways, let's get to the movies. I am going to talk about um, two. Well, one is an American movie, so technically it's not really Middle Eastern, but I'll include it with these. And another one is by an American filmmaker, but it just so happens that some of it is set in Israel. So, anyways, why don't we? But keeping with the title, let's start off with the Middle Eastern films. And they happen. All three of these that I'm first going to say are all of them come from Iran, and Iran is an interesting place in cinema. Cinema history. Um, I don't know. Maybe I don't. I think I'd like to know a little more about the history of Iran, but um, well, maybe Iran was maybe I'm getting my facts wrong. Maybe they were known for progressing things back in ancient times with like math or science. Maybe I'm wrong on that. They have a very interesting culture. I think like the Japanese, you have to take your shoes off before you enter a house, and they have tea. They have hot tea like the Japanese do. Tea is a big thing, I think, in their culture. Um, but anyways, like Middle Eastern cinema, um, I'm watching these three Iranian movies off a site called Fandor. Fandor shows they show foreign movies, they show American movies, they show cult films, shorts, artistic ones, avant garde. They show mainstream Hollywood stuff, but they have like some interesting films that you wouldn't see like on Netflix, for example, like Iran. You might be able to see one or two films from Iran maybe on Netflix, but they've got stuff from areas of Africa that um, and the Middle East that you're not going to hear of on probably on Netflix. Countries like Ghana, Mali, in Africa, um, Ivory Coast, Congo, and Middle East. You're going to get places like Pakistan and Afghanistan. Um, I think maybe Iraq. So, some in Southeast Asia, you've got places like Cambodia, Vietnam. Um, you've got Thailand. So you got a big assortment of films from those areas. Some of the areas I saw in Fandor are a little. They don't have much from that a particular country, like Cambodia, for example. I think they only have two films from Cambodia, but anyways, these films. Oh, I have to take a break for a minute. I'll be back. Um, it won't break exactly. It'll stop for a second. I'll be back right on. So I'll be back in a second. So I was gonna say, as far as Middle Eastern nations go, or countries or whatever, I think Saudi Arabia, um, for I don't know the current situation. If you know anything about their movie industry that I don't, or I'm wrong on, just make a comment below. But um, it was illegal to watch movies in Saudi Arabia, and you could watch television that was legal, but movies were illegal. But anyways, and this is not a film that's in my list of films I watched, but I'll in a way include it in a sense. Um, there was a movie made in Saudi Arabia called Wajda. It's spelled Wadja, and Wajda is the name of a young girl who wants to buy a bike. But in Saudi Arabia, women are considered second citizens to men, and she's sort of discouraged from buying the bike. So she enters a um, Quran competition. It's to like raise money for people like Hamas. Um, and the person who directed the movie was a woman, and she had to direct the film like in a van, like outdoor scenes. She had to go in a van and look on the monitor to direct the movie. It's a really good movie, and I thought it was a film that should have been nominated for best foreign film at the Academy Awards, but it didn't happen. But really good movie. Um, anyways, so I saw I saw I think yeah, Christmas Time is the first film on Christmas I watched, The White Meadows, which is directed by Mohammed. I might be butchering the name, Rasulov, and also has Jafar Panahi as the editor, who's he's a big director now in Iran. I think if I got my Iranian directors right, I think he's under house arrest. There's a movie um, that's a documentary of him. Well, actually, there's two of them. I think now that I come to think of it, I think there's two house arrest movies that have been made in Iran. The one I'm thinking of, well, the one I'm thinking of right this minute is he lives like in an apartment complex or something, um, and the footage he shoots, or I think it's another famous film director comes to visit him, another Iranian director, and in order to get the film shown to the rest of the world, they put it on a chip and put it in a cake and smuggled it that way through to get it out of the country. So that's one film he made, and he couldn't get like an appeal on his on his sentence, and I guess it was for making yes for making movies. There was another film too. I think it was a different director, and he was on house arrest too. Um, I think he just showed people coming in to drop things off, stuff like that. I wish I could remember the names of those movies, but I can't. Anyways, so this movie that I just mentioned, The White Meadows, um, it's It's about. I'm trying to remember this because I saw this on Christmas, so it's been a little while since I've seen it. So this man, he takes a boat and he comes to collect bodies, and they have to be like covered because they have certain taboos and rituals. And he also collects tears. They have tear bottles. I don't know the history of tear bottles in Middle Eastern culture, but I know like a few thousand years ago they had these tear bottles. So he would go. The main character in the film, he goes up to people that are mourning the death of somebody, and he presses the bottle against their cheek, and he collects their tears. And he when he collects all the tears together, then he like I think he what he does with it is he pours it in the ocean, and it's supposed to make sure that things go all right. Like a superstition or a rite or whatever. So, anyways, he picks up this body, and it turns out it's a live person. It's a young boy, and he tells him, just pretend to be deaf and dumb, um, and then nobody will suspect anything. There's a scene where a woman is, well, I don't want to give too much away, but she's given away to the sea, and they sort of have this belief, or at least in the film, in the film, the world of the film, they have this belief that the sea will be kind to her or whatever if she's a pure person or whatever. So, but The White Meadows was a beautiful movie. I mean, the cinematography was jaw dropping. Um, maybe a little. I mean, I think Fandor, because I'm gonna talk about another film in a few minutes. Um, I don't know if all of them have good prints of the films, because another film that I'm going to mention um, didn't have the best film quality, and the subtitles might be from a 60 millimeter print. I'm not sure, but anyways, The White Meadows, I I think is a pretty good movie. So I think I'm describing it okay. And later, well, I don't want to say too much. Like later on, a person that's a criminal he has to take him on his boat to another island where this warden chains him to the rock or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I'm describing it awfully well, but I think it's just the atmosphere of the movies makes it pretty fascinating to watch. So I enjoyed it a lot. So out of 5 stars, I'd give it. Um, I'm gonna give it. I'll give it 4 out of 5. I think it's excellent. 5 would be like one of the greatest films ever made, one of my favorites. But yeah, 4 stars. So next up, let's see. We got a film called About 111 Girls, which is a new. And that White Meadows film, that was 2009. Um, but the print looked like it was older, but I don't know. So this next film is about 111 Girls. I wish I could remember the year it came out. I think this came out pretty recently, like within the last few years. It's directed by Nahid Gobadi and also Bijan Zamanpira. So this is maybe when I start a film that I don't know is a comedy. I think this film is a comedy. Um, I was taking it seriously. I don't know if it's supposed to be part serious and part comedy, but towards the end of the film, I was saying something's not quite right here. Like this is kind of absurd. You know how like my favorite director Kubrick made Doctor Strangelove. He was going to make a drama, and the more and more he put research into it and was working on it, he said this really is crazy. Nuclear war and the end of the world and all that. So he made a comedy out of it. So, anyways, this film is about a government official who's sent by the president of Iran to the Kurdish part of the country. And these young girls, these Kurds, they don't want to be married off. So they're going to commit mass suicide. And he has to find the place where they are. You know, they don't have GPS or whatever. And he has, on the way there, after he's picked up by another guy, um, they stop at this area and they can't decide which way to go, left or right. They don't know which way to go, and they see one of the Iranian military. I think they call them the Republican Guard, and they have a guy with a burlap sack. I think it's like a burlap sack over his head, and they're going to stone him to death, basically. Um, and they ask for directions for this Kurdish place that they want to go to, and he's not really this military guy's not being really that helpful. So they have a young boy with them at that point, and they decide to go by the young boy's instructions. And their car breaks down, and things just keep unfolding. Um, they're going to stay at a teacher's school or something on their way there. So they get to the Kurdish area of Iran, and they're near the Turkish border. And I think this is where the comedy enters. They have the Turkish grooms. This is where I think the comedy is. These Turkish grooms to be married off to the Iranians, and the Iranians don't like that one bit, So I think that's I don't. Oh, but then something happens because the Iranian government doesn't want to show Iran in a bad light to the people of Iran. So you'll see if you see the movie that they do something as propaganda to is it propagate? I don't know, to keep alive the myth that there's no such thing as the suicides going on. They do something to signify what I won't tell what they do, but and there's something that happens at the end with the car that they're traveling in, the main character and the two other characters, and I think that's where the absurdity just rolls in. So this film, I probably would give it. I'm a sucker for these Middle Eastern movies. Iran, um, and maybe some African movies. But anyways, I'm going to give this maybe. Let's see, how many stars would I give this film? I'm going to give it 3.5 or 4. I'm going to give it 4 stars. It's a really good ending. The way it ends, I highly recommend it. I'm a sucker for these. And the last Iranian film I'm going to talk about today is from '69. So, that was what I was going to mention earlier. Iran, at one point in their history, was a democratic country. If you know much better about the history of Iran, just put your comments down there, because I'm no Iranian expert, but they were a democratic country, and then the U.S. government, I think it's because of oil, they instituted the Shah into power in Iran, and the Shah treated the Iranian people like crap, I don't know if that was when Nixon and Kissinger were in power, but so the Shah treated the Iranian people not very well, and Ayatollah Khomeini was in exile in France, and the late '70s, when Carter was president. I sort of remember this when being a kid. They took hostages. I think it was 40 people. There's a really good movie by Ben Affleck that he directed, the one Best Picture, called Argo, where he, I know I'm digressing sort of, where where it's a true story where he creates a reason to come into Iran and get the hostages out of the country. Um, that's a really enjoyable film, lots of fun, nail biter. I don't think it was a lot of fun when it happened, but but anyway, so Ayatollah Khomeini came back, and the Shah was ill, and he went to a number of countries. He was here, I think, for a while when he was in exile, and then he died shortly thereafter. So then Iran became a theocracy. It was a country that was a Muslim country. But this film from '69, they're also mentioning things like when you walk into somebody's house, you say Allah be praised, Shalom Alaikum, or is that a Hebrew? Um, Allah Akbar. So you say like uh, peace to you, peace be unto you, may God be praised, something like that. And I've noticed in other Iranian films, like A Separation, for example, which I highly recommend. I've said this on somebody Jace's stream. Separation, The Circle, great movie about how women are treated in Iran. I really like that film a lot. I love that movie. And Bran, about a young woman that poses as a young man to feed her, make ends meet, help her family survive financially. Um, so, um, yeah, so the Iran became a country that became a theocracy, and you couldn't use the Lord's name in vain, and women had to put veils around their head, not to the extent that Saudi Arabia does. Saudi Arabia, it's like they have to cover the face, or maybe that's married women have to be like that, um, um, but yeah, they had to be covered all over their body, except for their face. And there's a film I saw at the horror marathon. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's an Iranian film again, and the main character, she goes down a street in Iran, and the Republican Guard, I think that's what they're called, they catch her in the dark because it's a horror movie, and she gets off easy because the usual punishment, I guess, for women if they don't wear their scarves or shawls or whatever, is like lashes, lashes on your body. What was I going to say? Yeah, and I don't think women can drive cars in Iran, so it's a pretty, but it might be a slight step up from Saudi Arabia. Um, so, anyways, let's get to the third Iranian film. I see him going on a while, but um, it says 18 minutes, almost 18, but then I know I stopped it for a second, so it's longer than that. Maybe I'm at 25 minutes by now. So the last Iranian film I'll talk about is called The Cow. It's from 1969, and on Fandor it's said to be the greatest Iranian film ever made. It's directed by Dariush, Dariush, Mehrjul, Mehrjul. And like they said in the description on Fandor, they call it like Italian neorealism. And so it's in a way like Bicycle Thieves by De Sica. This like group of menacing guys are stealing cattle, and this guy's protecting his cow, and he has to leave town for a little while, and so the townspeople are real protective of him. You know, they care about him, so they make up. The cow is killed basically, or not basically. The cow's killed. So the townspeople, they make up. They say the cow got lost, but he's not buying it. Um, and and then they say one of the villagers or townspeople went after the cow, and he hasn't come back yet. And then he comes back, even though he didn't go anywhere. And he says to the main character, he says, "Oh, I got your cow back," because they buried the cow before he got back. Um, and then the main character, I don't know if it's a literal thing or he just goes insane, but he becomes the cow himself. So I like its simplicity. I like the um, oh, by the way, did I say what I thought of about 111 Girls? How many stars I give that? Probably give it 3.5 stars. Going back to the cow, so it's really, really simple movie. I don't know if there's tons of symbolism in it, um, but maybe it's talking about the necessary things in life. You know, um, having access to milk and just being able to survive. I don't know if I'm getting that correctly, but I thought it was a really good film. It's just very, very simple. It's not like a very thick, um, deep, heavy, metaphoric movie. I don't think it's maybe it's sort of embodying the mythology of the Iranian people, the Persian myths or whatever, of him becoming a cow or whatever. The main character who owns a cow, So, and I wish I could remember how it ends. But anyways, this film is really good, so I'm gonna give it about 4.5 stars. And then I am gonna talk about the American movie, but let me digress. Well, not digress. I'm gonna talk about the film I watched tonight. It's called Adam Resurrected. This is an American movie. It was produced by not Israel and Germany, directed by Paul Schrader, who he wrote the screenplay for one of my favorite films of all time, which is Taxi Driver. And he's directed some other movies like Mishima, American Gigolo, um, Blue Collar. Light. I think he did Light Sleeper. I think he did, and Affliction. That's a really good one. But anyways, he made this film, and it stars Jeff Goldblum and Willem Dafoe, and it takes place during World War II, during the Holocaust, and the aftermath of that. And the Jeff Goldblum character is a Jew, and he does like magic tricks before the war hits, and like one of the Nazis that he uses in a demonstration, one of his shows, he meets up with at the concentration camp. But the Willem Dafoe basically tries to make him look like a fool, because I think Goldblum made him look like a fool at the cabaret or whatever it was in Berlin before the Nazis became big. And it's a pretty bad movie, I have to say. I've met Paul Schrader. He signed my Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, and Last Temptation of Christ DVDs. He's a real nice guy, really pleasant. But this one was kind of a miss for me, because the Jeff Goldblum character, it cross cuts between the past and the present being the 60s in Israel. And he goes through a process, and the war ends, and he finds out his daughter might still be alive. But he spends some of the time in the quote present, which being the 60s, in this mental asylum. And it gets tiresome real quick, and it's kind of ridiculous. Because like he has an alcohol problem, he has a drinking problem, and yet there's bottles stashed behind vents of heaters, and there's different bottles in the same area. How did he get a bottle from there? It doesn't make much sense how he would transfer a bottle, how the staff wouldn't know, and how he acts crazy. Just it just doesn't add up. There doesn't seem to be. I don't get the motivation for the scenes. They don't make any sense. I know it's a mental asylum, and they're not going to act like regular people do, but there has to be some method to the madness, and it seems like they're trying out improvisational things like, why don't we do this? Like when they're filming it, like, why don't we try this out? Why don't we try that out? Why don't we try this out? And maybe, when you look at it at the end of the day, and you see it edited all together, it's a mishmash, and you can't quite make you can't add it up in the correct manner. So that's the way I view it. Like he's choking the woman he likes at the mental asylum, and then he's making love to her. It's just these huge leaps of logic. Uh, it just doesn't make any sense, So I can't recommend this movie. I'm going to have to give it a oh. I don't know. I'll give it 2.5. Marginal thumbs down. So here we come to the home stretch. Last film I watched on December 27th was Maniac, directed by William Lustig, 1980. I think I really enjoyed this movie. It's a horror movie or a thriller or slasher, or it's about a guy who goes around New York City and collects women's scalps and kills them. I saw the Elijah Wood remake, and I thought the Elijah Wood. I might have mentioned the Elijah Wood remake on one of my videos. I probably did. I don't know which one it was, and I really didn't like that one because I thought Elijah Wood was acting in the movie. You could tell he was trying to be a serial killer, but it came off as very fake and not authentic. But the main character, the original Maniac main character, he's good. He sort of looks like Ron Jeremy to me, the guy who plays him. And what else would I say about the film? I like how it ends. It ended the same way in the Elijah Wood remake, but I think it does it better. And also, there's a scene where he makes friends with one of his victims, and you see that in Elijah Wood one, but that's not very well done in Elijah Wood one. This one seems much more natural and doesn't impede the flow of the narrative. And yeah, the killings are well choreographed. He's a very creepy guy, and I think that's conveyed very well through his character. And he gets his just desserts, I guess. Or maybe I shouldn't have said that. Well, I'll leave it in. I don't know if anybody cares. I don't know. I won't say how he gets his just desserts. Let's put it that way. All right, so that about does it. Maybe I'll try and do another one of these next Saturday. Um, so, anyways, thanks a lot. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Check out my GarageBand songs. I put up 3 recently. Um, I know they've got some hits, but I'm just trying to see if people will watch it. More people will watch. And you know, if you scroll down, you see more GarageBand songs. And I have some streams that I did. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a stream at some point. I don't know when, and I don't know what I would do the stream on because I was covering all my favorite films and honorable mentions, and I basically covered them all. Um, so I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments below. I'll see you in the near future.